Hello, and I am glad you have joined me today for the session on counseling the counselor during uncertain times. My name is Boyd Bradshaw, and I'm the Associate Vice Chancellor of Enrollment Management and Chief Enrollment Officer at IUPUI in Indianapolis, Indiana. And for today's session, what we ask is that you hold your questions to the end. We will have a Q&A at the end of this presentation. So in getting started, could you ever imagine what we're facing today in the higher ed community and the work that we do, not only as high school counselors, but also as professionals, and to ensure that students can choose a college and be successful and have successful outcomes in their career? There are a few things that I thought about in putting together this presentation that I want to talk to you about today, and how things have changed in our landscape. And in my role as a higher ed professional is to collaborate and to talk to you about these things to ensure that you're also encouraging your students to help them to navigate through the enrollment process. First of all, who could have imagined that we would be 100% virtual? And it just doesn't affect one person or one place. It impacts the student, the counselor, and the college. And what this tells me is that we're all in this together in order to really meet what we're seeing in today's environment and the challenges that we face during this time. Who could have imagined that applying to colleges would be so different? Who could have imagined that we'd be moving the May 1 deadline to what many of us did, to June 1st, and then even extending it through the summer up into the first day of class, which truly has an impact on our work. You know, we've talked so much in the past about deadlines and the importance of deadlines, but you kind of have to throw it out, you know, during the pandemic or during times like this that we're dealing with today. You know, who could have imagined that the campus visit would be so different? You know, how in the heck are students supposed to choose a college by not actually going to the campus and seeing it for themselves? It'd be like choosing a new job, you know, not getting to go to the company to see your office. And those are some of the obstacles, you know, that we have to continue to work with. As some may prefer a virtual campus experience and they see great value in that. Others do not. They need to set foot on campus. We'll be talking a little bit more about that. Who could imagine that we may not be making high school visits, or we are not hosting college fairs this year, or at least for this fall? How do you get information to students without having those two key things that we're so accustomed to doing, both from the college side, but also from the high school counselor side? And for high school counselors, can you imagine not being able to greet a college rep when they come to campus? Or having the student who has all these questions, how do you align them appropriately to make sure that their questions are answered when you anticipated that high school visit to have the place to do that? Publications and letters. Many of us are not even sending publications no longer, or letters, because we don't have staff on campus to do that. For the student, they may prefer that. And so what are we doing together to ensure that students are getting the right information if they really choose to get that piece of paper in their hand? And particularly for parents who really value that document or that publication or that letter. Financial aid and scholarships, so crucial right now in a time of pandemic and crisis. Many individuals' jobs have changed, parents' income loss. You know, how are we handling that from our perspective, and how are you handling it from your perspective in counseling families about making that investment, which is so huge for all of us? We could never imagine that test optional would be the thing. We're so geared towards ACT and SAT scores, and before this time, you know, many of us were already shifting to test optional. About 1,000 universities in the country prior to 2020 had already made this move. The majority of us are there now just because of the challenges that we're facing, particularly due to the access of the SAT, the ACT exam. And you know what we have found at my institution, that GPA is a fine predictor for college success. And we had moved to test optional, and we're planning to move to test optional before the pandemic. And what the research has showed us across the country is that GPA, as long with ACT and SAT scores, are both good predictors. And having one or the other of both we will be just fine, you know, in making the right decision to enroll the right student in our institution. What about some of these colleges and universities decreasing tuition? You see it every day in the news. Such and such institution has lowered the price. Some have not. How do you counsel a student in a situation where the university hasn't lowered their price, but they see that others have? And how do you answer that question of why? Living on campus, the challenges of students living on campus today are so hard to really sit down and have a conversation. Is it safe? Can I have a roommate? Can I invite friends over to hang out with me? Do I have to get tested every day? You know, those are lots of questions that students have, and really being able to counsel a student through those types of questions. What we're finding and what my colleagues are telling me is that students want to be on campus. They want to live in the residence halls. They want that experience. But as a campus, can we provide that in a way that meets the students' expectations? And that leads us to the campus experience. We have to ensure that students that do choose to live on campus have this experience that meets their needs. So for example, if we invite students to live in our residence halls and our offices are not open for the students, what we're saying is, yeah, come to campus and live, but we can't provide you face-to-face services that you prefer. And so what you'll see across the country are the campuses are opening up because there are students that are going to live on campus. And we have to make sure and ensure that we are providing the services, the activities. They may look different, and they will look different, but that is something that we want to make sure that we're able to counsel the student on as well. The number of safety protocols, to be honest with you, it's confusing. And even on my campus and other campuses across the country, every campus is treating this very different. Some are requiring testing, some are not. Some are requiring temperature checks, some are not. And so being able to counsel a student through that without giving student anxiety is really, really key. And I hope we can, you know, some tips that I will share today will hopefully help you. And then also the various modes of instruction. It's complicated, hard language to understand. None of us did it very well in the spring, and we are learning about it in the summer, but as we approach the fall, I think we can say we've made great progress, both from the secondary side as well as from the college side. An example of something that we're doing at IUPUI, which I know other universities are doing, is having faculty members provide videos to ensure that students, to kind of relieve that anxiety that what they're going to get is a valued education. So I would like to show you this short video.
Hello, I am Rachel Swinford from the Department of Kinesiology in the School of Health and Human Sciences. I am so excited to see students this fall, whether that be in a hybrid setting or fully online. I've been taking 2 courses this summer to learn how I can better design online courses, and I'm very excited to implement the new ideas and the innovative ways of teaching in an online environment. I will be teaching a variety of courses all the way from 2 freshman first-year experience courses up to a hybrid capstone experience where students will do personal training. Like I said, I'm so excited to see everyone and can't wait to connect virtually.
And what we have to do is really provide that calmness that is really required for a student entering into college at a time that there is an unknown, and utilizing and using our faculty is key. And, you know, as advice to a counselor is encouraging your students to also reach out to faculty, advisors, admission counselors is going to be really, really important. And are some of the tips that I will be providing here shortly. But the one thing that I want to really show you here, again, this is part of that example on my campus, is that we've created this graphic to try to help students, high school counselors, parents understand what we mean by face-to-face and hybrid. At IUPUI, 40% of our classes are going to be face-to-face in some capacity. 60% are going to be online. If you look at this grid, as you work across, what we have here is in person. There's 2 types, face-to-face, which is your traditional instruction. You may have some online components, or the hybrid, where it's really, there's all various things happening in the classroom where students are in the same room together for some aspects, and for some aspects, it's delivered online. And then you have the various ways of doing online education, if it's synchronous, asynchronous, or hybrid. Synchronous is that the instructor is not physically in the classroom or the student. The asynchronous is students will never be physically present with the instructor, but they can interact with each other through a discussion, a forum, a recorded video, chat, or scheduled meetings. The hybrid online, which is one of the most unique options, is that the student and the instructor will meet on a regular basis through live Zoom sessions, with the remaining instruction being completed online. And I think that's what we're seeing in a lot of the secondary schools. Post-higher ed, higher ed is taking on that model as well. But I think that's the type of learning that the students are going to be familiar with most. And then the custom, that personalization is really key as we move forward. And what you see here is very typical of what other campuses are doing. And as a counselor, you'll want to be able to talk about these things. And I am happy to provide this resource. And we'll make sure that you get a copy of this as well as part of the presentation. So some tips. I think it's really important, if you can go to the right side of this slide and you talk about helping students, we know what is the important role that high school counselors play in guiding students through the college search process. And what we want to do as administrators on the college side is to make your job easy. And our team is here to provide assistance with everything. And not just looking at my campus, and this is actually a statement that we have on our website, but you'll see this at all other college campuses. We want to really connect with you as counselors to ensure that we're working together, especially during this time period. And there's various different ways that we can do that, and tips that I would encourage you to, in conversations that I would encourage you to have with your students. One is the advisory piece, is we have to create space for peer-to-peer education. And what we need to do is we need to work together, both as seasoned admission professionals and as high school counselors as we navigate to that. If we're not working together, we're not going to be successful. The other thing is really coaching the calm around the accessibility of the SAT and the ACT. For some students, they just may not be able to take it, and that's okay. And be able to have that conversation and reassurance that it's okay, because the majority of colleges and universities are waiving that requirement, at least for this next year. I know many of us have waived it for this fall as well, but you'll see more and more colleges and universities being flexible. It's really crucial that as a college counselor that you do connect with admission counselors. Admission counselors are being trained and being told to be more connected, more so than ever, without physically being in that environment. So it's more virtual, but there's ways to do it. And that's going to be an important key as we move forward during these difficult times. Also leaning on colleges for the access program. What many of us are finding is students from unrepresented markets are struggling getting the information that they need. They may not have access to the internet like others do. They may not have access to their high school counselor. So allow us as colleges to provide those types of services, to connect with us and see what we can do together as we move forward. We also want to make sure that we advise students to look at how best to communicate with colleges. Students want to communicate in different ways, and as universities, we need to provide and meet the student where they're at and how we communicate. So asking those questions up front are crucial. And there's a need to really dig into this new virtual environment and to ensure that students in universities are also providing that virtual experience that will really make the student feel like they're on a college campus. And working together on that and to be encouraging students to do the virtual tours, I think are important. As a college, we're investing a lot of resources into this. We want the feel and the look to be exactly like it is as you're walking through our doors physically. We want to encourage students to request information. Many times now we find that students are going on searching for us and we don't even know they're there. So I would encourage that student to stop, ask questions. There's no more crucial time during a crisis to ask the right questions, to make sure that we're answering the questions in a way that the student would want to make sure that they're making the right decision. We want to reiterate the importance of FAQs. Many of us universities are building out FAQs to answer all of the questions that we're getting. That's the easiest way to answer questions. And we all have chat features. We're using AI technology as well as we go through the process to make sure that, you know, when a student types a question, it's a computer that's responding. It gets punted to a staff member if the question cannot be answered. We want to encourage students to apply early, even without a test score. Don't wait. Test score is not as important to many of us as it has in the past. GPA, as I mentioned before, is a fine predictor. But of course, if a student really pursues and wants that test score, you know, we're happy to accept it and use it as part of the decision process. We want to advise students to be intentional with their conversations. We want to encourage families to conduct business virtually, especially around financial aid and scholarships. And actually, what I tell my staff each and every day, I think we're actually maybe providing better service virtually because we have that one-on-one time with families that we did not have before when a family is waiting in line to talk to a financial aid person, where you can get dedicated time virtually. And that's the case at other colleges as well. You know, use that as an opportunity. Just being virtual is not a bad thing. You know, there are some great things that come out of it. We want to make sure we encourage students to check their email. I know email for some students, they're not interested in that, but that's how we communicate as colleges. And there's no important time than now. Also encourage students to opt in on text messaging. Is free for majority. That is a way we're choosing to communicate as well. It's quick and easy. Many colleges have guidelines in place so they don't overwhelm students, but at the same time to make sure we get important information out. And most importantly, stay connected. We want to stay connected to our profession. It's wonderful that NACAC is doing this. What a great idea to make sure that we're connecting the college side to the high school side, and that we are able to benefit from today's session. And I can't wait to hear your questions, and I look forward to the conversation. Thank you.